We have a massive Lakers trade update to go over today. A brand new report has dropped, revealing some critical information surrounding the Lakers and one key target. We're going to break down exactly what the report is and discuss what it means going forward, as well as break down some interesting comments as Luka Doncic has revealed some more updates surrounding his offseason, as well as dropped some interesting tidbits. Stay tuned for all that in this episode, folks. Before we get into it all, if you're part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, this is the place to be for daily Lakers content, so make sure to hit that subscribe button. Thank you guys again for your continued support over here as we are on the road to the big goal of 30,000 subscribers. Ladies and gentlemen, there's a lot to go over today. We have a pretty big update surrounding one center, Daniel Gafford, but also some intriguing comments from Luka Doncic that came out yesterday and the day before. And as the offseason continues to continue to progress and rumors continue to inch closer and closer to reality here, things are going to be very intriguing, especially for the Lakers team, who are prone to be very active this offseason. And they're also prone to make a move for a center. And let's talk about that center. You can see this here from Jovan Buha. Dropped a report yesterday that the Lakers would have to overpay if they wanted to get Daniel Gafford. And the exact quote was, they would probably have to overpay. It would probably have to be something like Gabe Vincent, Dalton Knecht, and a first-round pick for Daniel Gafford, and that's a lot. And of course, Daniel Gafford has been the number one priority on a lot of Lakers lists and a lot of articles lately because of course, his chemistry with Luka Doncic back with the Mavericks. They made the finals together, all these different things, and people initially thought once the report came out that Daniel Gafford was going to be available from the Dallas Mavericks, or at least rumored to be available, that the Lakers would be the perfect team to go out and at least make a bid for him, simply because of the fact that, again, he's played with Luka in the past, and he's a very good center, and the Lakers have a glaring hole at center. And there's been, it's been pretty quiet. It's been crickets for the last little bit on Daniel Gafford until yesterday or the day before, and Jovan Buha came out and said this. Now, the package of Gabe Vincent, Knecht, and a first for Gafford is, like Jovan Buha says, it is a lot, because that's the same package essentially that they gave up for Mark Williams at the trade deadline, who, is younger, has higher upside, a better future. Is he a better player right now? You could probably argue that as well, even though I would argue that, the chemistry between Daniel Gafford and Luka Doncic would maybe make it better for the immediate future here. But the exact quote was this. That'd be something like Gabe Vincent, Dalton Knecht, and a first-round pick, and that's a lot. And of course, you see here, the Lakers already tried to trade Dalton Knecht away from Mark Williams at deadline, but that trade was rescinded. Gafford also, which is very notable, has 1 year left on his contract, so they could either try to sign him in the 2026 offseason or make a trade for him. But of course, the Lakers aren't looking for the 2026 offseason for a center. They need one desperately this year. However, the biggest problem with all of this is that I don't know if the Lakers are going to give up what's equivalent of 2 first-round picks, what Dalton Knecht, of course, first-round pick in last year's draft, and then a first-round pick in the 2031 draft for Daniel Gafford. It seems like a very steep price to pay for someone who has 1 year left on their deal, unless they're confident they can get an extension done. But even if they're confident, have all the confidence in the world about an extension specifically, still don't know if that's even worth it for a guy like Daniel Gafford. And you can see some other reports and rumors that have started to float out here. And this is another trade. This is a 3-team deal between the Mavericks, the Atlanta Hawks, and the Lakers. The Lakers received Daniel Gafford. The Mavericks received Gabe Vincent, Jared Vanderbilt, Georges Niang, a second-round pick, and, of course, a swap. Now, this is a lot more, I'm not going to say realistic, because according to Jovan Buha, this is less realistic, but a lot more reasonable for the Lakers. They're essentially trading filler and a first-round pick swap and a second-round pick or 2 for Daniel Gafford. Of course, Atlanta receives Najee Marshall, a very solid point forward. But for Daniel Gafford and the Lakers, if you can get him for a swap rather than giving up all of your assets for him, then it makes some sense. But again, if you have to give up, because the Lakers don't have a ton of assets to play with here. Of course, they gave a lot of them up in the Anthony Davis trade, and they gave a lot of them up in the Luka Doncic trade, although it was a very good trade, obviously. But Gabe Vincent, Dalton Knecht, like Gabe Vincent, sure, salary filler. You're giving up Dalton Knecht in your first. At that point, you don't have much room then left to make additional moves, which they still need a 3-and-D wing. I mean, they need a lot of different things. At that point, they need a backup point guard because Gabe Vincent was their backup point guard. You need a lot of different holes there to be filled. And Jovan Buha, seemingly, which makes essentially the Daniel Gafford target a bit less likely, at least at this point. Now, things can change. The Mavericks could get a lot less, eager to trade him, and they could just hold on to him, or they could get more eager to trade him, and they could, maybe entertain other offers similar to the one that you see here, which is more realistic. I think more aligned with what his value is. But also, if you're the Mavericks, you're probably going to want to keep Daniel Gafford if you're trying to compete next year alongside, Anthony Davis, who prefers to play the 4. You have Kyrie Irving, and then, of course, you have some other players as well that they can, work with to either build around, because we know the Mavericks want to win. That's why Nico Harrison did that deal with the Lakers. In theory, even though it doesn't make a ton of sense, they're trying to win basketball games. And trading Daniel Gafford, although they have, an abundance of centers in theory, Derek Lively, of course, trying to take over. I don't know if that's the best. I mean, I do know that it would probably not be the best, order of business to get rid of him if it's just for pennies on the dollar. But if it's for a steal like this, I think both sides could come to an agreement that it might work for both. But again, an extension would have to be in place. Leave a comment down below. what you think what do you think of this deal? Do you think this is good? Do you think this is bad? And do you think this is an overpay? I prefer obviously this trade, mainly because it just makes sense and it saves the Lakers other assets to be able to go out and get a different player. Now, whether that's, and again, is Daniel Gafford a starting center? That's another question the Lakers would have to ask themselves. He's played backup for the majority of his career, so of course he played some with the Wizards as well, started some games there, and but on a competitive team, usually he was the backup center, especially during the days with a couple years ago with Luka Doncic in the finals. But he also started a handful of games. So let me know what your thoughts are on that. But let's also touch on Luka Doncic. He came out and on the Mind the Game podcast spoke out on a bunch of different things. The Lakers a little bit, but of course also about playing at Real Madrid at a young age. And reading into some of these comments, it's kind of encouraging because we're starting to actually understand Luka Doncic more, both on the court and off the court. And of course, the podcast does a great job of portraying that. But it says it was a difficult decision going to Madrid at 13. The language, but then nobody spoke my language. It was hard. The first 2 to 3 months, I didn't speak to anyone. And after that, it was an amazing journey that changed my life forever. It was a lot of practice. I love practice. We had a lot of skill set, but that was an hour. I was a half an hour to 45 minutes. So basically he's talking about, of course, his career leading up to the NBA. We all know how good he was with Real Madrid. Probably should have went first overall given the experience that he had compared to some of the other guys and how well they've been. But of course, at the time of that draft, there was some recent busts, with players similar to Luka Doncic, that didn't take the traditional college path and went overseas and things like that. So obviously it worked out for, I guess now ended up working out for the Lakers, worked out for the Mavericks at the time, but to see his work ethic is obviously going to be very good. And he also spoke out of why scoring in the NBA is easier than in Europe. He said, when I was 15, I started my first practice of the team. I was scared, I was nervous, I was shaking. In Europe, it's more about the team. It's different rules in the NBA. When I say it's easier to score in the NBA, it is different rules. You have more spacing and more minutes. In Europe, you get a big guy that stands in the paint. It's hard to score. Here, you can't do that because it's a 3-second violation. Of course, this has been a hot topic for a while, but I mean, he's not necessarily wrong either. Of course, no 3 seconds in Madrid, so they just have a big center sit in the paint, but a very different game. And of course, Luka has been using this since his career started to use the skill and the knowledge that he has back in Real Madrid to help work for his NBA career, and ultimately it has up until this point. And it's it's very interesting. Hearing him speak out about his younger self is always interesting to hear because he's going to be a Laker for life now, we assume. And you can see another quote here. It was the quarterfinals. We were up 30 and I was 16, but I was BS. He yelled at me. He made me cry, talking about a coach and how it changed how he viewed basketball at the time. So all this is relevant, obviously, because he's with the Lakers now and he can use some of that knowledge that he gained to help not only with the younger players, but also just in general with the team. Because at this point, I mean, he's playing with a rookie coach and now going to be a sophomore coach in JJ Redick, but also with Luka Doncic, he's going to be comfortable now. He seems comfortable with the team. He seems comfortable with his teammates. Of course, going on the Mind the Game podcast with LeBron James, slowly learning, and there was a lot of praise as well for Austin Reaves. LeBron James came out and spoke about Austin Reaves as well, talking about how the big three with Reaves, LeBron, and Luka, no one's going to be able to stop him once they figure out how to play with each other, and especially with Austin Reaves in the way that he seemed a little bit uncomfortable at times following the Luka trade. If he can play and take one more step, doesn't have to be a huge step, it can be a little bit of a small baby step, but regardless of that, if he takes, he is really good. He is a beast of a player, and he can really emphasize that, especially playing with two of the better facilitators we've ever seen. So let me know down below what your thoughts are on all of that. A ton of news coming out. We're going to keep you up to date. You guys will be. Thanks for watching. See you there.